Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be solving LeetCode 695, max area of an island. So we're given an m by n binary matrix grid. An island is a group of ones representing land connected four directionally, horizontally, or vertically, and we can assume all four edges of the grid are surrounded by water. The area of an island is the number of cells with a value 1 in the island. We need to return the maximum area of an island within our grid. If there's no island, we can just return 0. So we can take a look at example 1. The maximum island they give us has an area of 6, right? There are 6 cells in here that have the number 1, which represent this island. So this is going to be very similar to the counting number of islands problem. So we are going to solve this using depth first search, and the code is going to be pretty much the exact same as that problem. So let's get started. We'll say stack is going to be equal to an empty array. We're going to have a visited set to keep track of the positions on our grid we have seen. We will have an area counter. Now, let's loop through our grid, right? We have to go through every row and every column. So we'll say for row in range length of our grid, for column in range length of our grid 0. What do we want to do? We need to check and make sure that this row column pair is a 1. So we'll say if grid of the row column pair, if that is equal to a 1, and we have not seen this row column pair before, so we'll say row, if I could type today, row column not in visited. What are we going to do? That means we have run into a brand new island, right? Pretty similar to the last problem. So instead of incrementing the count, we are going to set the area of this specific island to 0, right? And then we will increment it when we run depth first search. So we'll say current area, we'll set it to 0 initially, and we will add this row column pair onto our stack. So we'll say stack.append the row column pair. Now we can run our depth first traversal. So we'll say while the length of our stack is not equal to 0, what are we going to do? We are going to grab the row column pair by doing a stack.pop. Now we need to check and make sure if this row column pair is a valid value within our grid. So if we start at 0, 0, right, this is a valid value in our grid. For example, -1 would not be a valid value. So we have to say if r is less than or is equal to or greater than the 0 and r is less than the length of our grid, and we have to do the same thing for the column. So the column has to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than the length of grid 0. If this is true, now we have to check and see if the value at that row column pair is a 1 or a 0, and if that row column pair is not in our visited set yet. So we'll say if our C is not in our visited set and grid of that our C, that row column, if that is equal to a 1, what can we do? We can increment the current area by 1, right? We found another block that is a continuation of the island we found up here. So we'll just say current area plus 1. Now we can add this row column pair to our visited set. Visited.add that row column pair. Now we can just add on the surrounding blocks of our grid. So we'll say stack.append the current row and the next column. We will say stack.append the current row and the previous column. And we will say stack.append the previous row at the current column, and we will say stack.append the next row at the current column. Right? Now, once we exit this while loop, that means we have finished a depth first search traversal on one island. So what do we do after we have finished our traversal over one island? We have to check and see if we can update this area variable, right? So we'll say area will be equal to the max of either itself or of this current area variable we just got done updating. And then at the end of it all, we can just return the area. So let's run this. Perfect, passes both test cases, so we'll submit. Awesome. Now, time and space complexity, it's going to be the exact same as the island counts. Time complexity is going to be O of row times columns, right? We have to traverse every row, every column in our grid. And then the space complexity is going to be the same. We are storing every row, column, pair in our visited set. All right, that'll do it for LeetCode 695.